Ooh, yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I am back and better than ever. Face facts, because your opinions don't matter. I am here. I am live. After the 2-week hiatus, thanks to Turkey Day and the old sniffles that I had, I'm back, I'm here, and I'm ready to discuss 10 of the worst horror movie sequels of all time. It's going to be a blast of a show, ladies and gentlemen. We also have audio on Facebook. It's breaking news. Johnny Campbell, I'm sorry, your show got all screwed up audio-like, but it's okay. We're here, we're better than ever, and we're going to do this. First of all, I'm going to give a recommendation of the week. This is going to be the only positive movie I talk about on this entire show. So sit back, relax, ease the seat back, and enjoy the ride. Grab your vitamin water, your popcorn, all that good stuff, ladies and gentlemen. Here we go. So this is the only good thing I'm going to be talking about in this episode, my recommendation of the week, and it is from 1987. It is Peter Jackson. Yes, that Peter Jackson from Lord of the Rings fame. It is Bad Taste from 1987. And if you haven't seen or heard of Bad Taste, I gotta tell you, man, you're missing out on a big part of your life. Like, this movie is legendary, man. I love me some Bad Taste. Bad Taste was a movie that Peter Jackson and his buddies, they shot over a 4-year period. And it's basically the story of these aliens that come down to Earth, and they pretty much kill an entire town. They wipe this entire town out. And one by one, these people are starting to kind of realize, Peter Jackson and his group, that these aliens are killing all these people. And they start to realize that these aliens are killing people in order to provide meat for an intergalactic fast food chain. And if that's not a great enough plot for you, I don't know what is, because it's such a legendary plot, man. Like, that is so backcrap crazy, but like in the best kind of backcrap crazy. And you just have really fun characters and effects in this movie, like the Derek character played by Peter Jackson himself, and they're saying, Derek, you got to run from the aliens, man. And he goes, I'm a Derek, and Dereks don't run. And it's just like, you're just like, what? Like, what is he even going on about? But like, I love this movie, man. They're just like, all right, well, if you can't run, then go hide in a tree somewhere, man. It's just one of those, like, he's just like, wow, this is something. This is thrown out there. But man, Peter Jackson has so much fun with this movie, and this movie is gory as all hell, and I love it for that. It's one of those movies where Peter Jackson knew that he didn't have the effects and he didn't have the kind of budget to make this movie all that much, so he had to go down to the well and kind of be more creative with it. And he threw all sorts of different kinds of effects in there. We don't have the best looking blood, but we're just going to throw so much of it at you that the people are going to be like, wow, this is amazing. This is so ridiculous, the amount of gore that is in this movie, but damn, I love it. And I don't know, man, you just have so many fun little scenes where the head alien is telling all these other aliens, like, well, I can't wait to get off this crappy planet and get back to ours so we can start selling all this intergalactic burgers that we've made of human flesh and all that. Like, it's one of those movies that's just so out there, but you kind of appreciate it because it does have that homemade feel to it. It's such a homemade type of film. And I think that's the main reason why it works. It has that charm to it. There's a scene where they're fighting these aliens in this big old gunfight, and this one guy has a rocket launcher, and he decides, I'm just going to shoot it at this house. And boom, he shoots it, and the rocket goes flying, and everybody in the house kind of averts it, and it goes through an open window. And when it goes through this open window, there's just like a lamb, like 30 yards away. Bam, hits that lamb, and the lamb explodes. So rocket launcher hitting a lamb and explodes in an uber 80s cheesy way. You can't beat that, ladies and gentlemen. It's just so hilarious. But it has that charm to it, like I said, man. And that's why this one really, really works, I think, as much as it works. And this is an up-and-coming filmmaker that actually went on to become really famous. I mean, Peter Jackson went on to make the Lord of the Rings trilogy, which some people will tell you are the best movies of all time. Now, of course, Dead Alive, which was one of the follow-ups to this. Of course, Meet the Feebles was one of the follow-ups to this. The Frighteners was one of the follow-ups to this. I think Peter Jackson did his best work in the horror genre, man. I really, really, really enjoyed his work in the horror genre because, like, he was one of those guys that he reminds me a lot of a Sam Raimi. He was like, I don't have the budget, I don't have the great acting, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to be creative, I'm going to be like innovative, and I'm also going to use just a lot of gore. just a lot of gore to the point where it's oversaturating your product. But you have to oversaturate to compensate for the things that you don't have. We don't have Charlize Theron and Angelina Jolie. We don't have a good-looking woman that could be the lead of this movie. So what do? Throw more blood on it. You know, we don't have great actors. All my friends are the actors. We don't have a budget to buy, you know, copyrighted music. What are we going to do? I'll have my friends in a band produce the music for me. That's what it takes to make it in this genre. If you're not willing to take those steps to make these movies, then you're not built for it. You're not a filmmaker. You can call yourself whatever you want, but at the end of the day, you're not a for-real filmmaker if you aren't willing to do what it takes to make it in this business. And like, I think Peter Jackson was one of those guys that was not going to take no for an answer, and I think he just absolutely hit it out of the park with Bad Taste. I love it. It's one of my favorite cheesy, low-budget 80s movies with, of course, like I said, a backcrap crazy plot and really fun characters, and it's just a memorable movie, man. And of course, the legendary poster where the VHS company, this is a fun story before we get into these bad, because this is going to be the end of my positives here. The poster to this was one of the aliens from the movie, and he's giving a middle finger to the guy taking the picture with the poster, and it just says Bad Taste, and it's legendary. It's an awesome poster design, right? And it's like one of those things where the VHS companies were like, we can't have you throwing the middle finger up on, you know, the shelves. Like when people see this, they're not going to buy this, or it'll offend people, you know, the typical politically correct stuff, right, that I hate. And basically they were like, so you have to add another finger to the poster, so it's the peace sign instead of the middle finger sign. And Peter Jackson reluctantly agreed, so they put the movie on shelves. And that's another one of the best things about this movie is that poster, because that poster, once you see that poster, you know what you're in for. It's one of those posters, it's not misleading at all. It's like, it's totally, you know, what you see on that poster is what you get in the movie. Excuse me, sorry, I'm a burp. But it's one of those movies that it just has such a good homemade feel to it, and I think it really, really works on so many levels. So Bad Taste, I totally recommend it. 1987, Peter Jackson, thank you very much for that. We really, really enjoyed. At least I did. So if you haven't seen Bad Taste, go see it. It's on Amazon Prime for free to watch if you don't own a copy of it. But here we go. We are diving into the crap. We are taking Cheyenne's idea. Cheyenne actually is the person that suggested this episode. She's waving. Cheyenne said, Granda, you're always so positive, and I hate it. It bothers me. I want you to be negative and poop on some of these movies. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to poop on some of these movies. These are some of the worst horror movie sequels of all time. I've contrived a top 10 list. No spoilers. I'm going to just go through this one by one. I'm also going to turn this computer on next to me so I know what time and stuff I have. Okay, we're good. So, all right, starting this top 10 list, I'm basically going to work my way, obviously, up to number 1. We're going to start at number 10. We'll do the dishonorable mentions before the number 1 pick. And we'll get into this pile of steaming monkey crap. Are we ready, ladies and gentlemen? I know I am. All right, let's do it. Okay, coming in at number 10, it is from 1985. It is from a critically acclaimed director and possibly his worst movie. It is The Hills Have Eyes Part 2 from 1985. This movie is horrendously bad. And I can give you a little bit of a background as to why it ended up being so bad. Basically, at the time, Wes Craven was financially in distress, and he was in trouble because he needed money to finance his next movie, A Nightmare on Elm Street. So they begged him, Wes, would you just make this sequel? And we will give you the finances to make A Nightmare on Elm Street. And he said, absolutely, I'll do it. I want to make this movie, so I'll go back to the well. I'll shoot this crappy movie so I get to do my masterpiece. And thank God he did, because as a result of this movie, we did actually get A Nightmare on Elm Street. Because without this, he would have never gotten the financing for it. So if for all else, it did actually end up in being a positive. However, if you could somehow sit through this movie, you absolutely feel cheated, man. This is one of the worst horror movie sequels of all time. It basically involves some of the remaining characters from the first movie, like the Bobby character, the Ruby character, and they basically all, instead of like, you know, working normal jobs and stuff like that, they run like a racetrack company, I think, and like with like all these like dirt bikers and stuff like that, and basically they're all hopping on a bus to go somewhere, And for some ungodly reason, they all go back into the same hills where they were attacked in the original film by better characters. And they are attacked by the same characters, yes, some of the same characters that already died in the original movie, such as Pluto, such as Big Papa Jupe. They're all back in this one, even though they all died in the original movie. See, this is the reason why the original Hills Have Eyes worked is because it was grimy. It was so dark and exploitive. And like the reason that movie really worked is because it felt like it could happen. It was so gritty. You felt like you were actually in the hills and you were actually going to get attacked by these crazy mutant things. But this movie, man, oh man, has some bad acting. And I know Kevin Spiritus, who went on to be in Friday the 13th Part 7, I believe, as the boyfriend character in that. He's in this one. He's okay. There's the lead character is a blind girl. Right? Yeah, a blind girl who kind of knows karate, and she kind of like has this battle with Pluto where she kicks him in the face. like Busta Rhymes, man. Busta Rhymes and Michael Myers is bad, but this is actually even worse. Like she's blind. How is she fighting Pluto blind and kicking his ass, I might add? It's just so bizarre, man. Like so bizarre. Like I don't know why of all the movies to make a sequel to, you'd pick this. And the craziest thing about this one is they actually, after this came out, they wanted to make a Last House on the Left Part 2. And they got Danny Steinman, who directed one of my favorite Friday the 13th sequels, Friday the 13th Part 5 in the beginning. They had him announced to be the director, and it was going to involve Krug. Yes, Krug, David Hess, the Krug character, coming back from the dead after he had been chainsawed in half, a normal guy. They were going to have him come back from the dead and attack people at a summer camp. So it was basically going to be Friday the 13th meets Last House on the Left, but the only problem is there was no supernatural element to Last House on the Left, and other than Jason recurring, coming back to life again, not much supernatural stuff going on Friday the 13th. So that was just an awful idea for a sequel, but I'll be honest, that even sounds better than this movie, because dirt bikers in the hills getting killed by Pluto and Mercury and Mars and all these people that have already died was really bad. And this movie also has a huge obsession with stock footage. They use a lot of stock footage for all these characters to kind of have flashbacks. And the greatest part of this movie, the greatest, like, most horrible part, because it's so horrendously bad that I still don't understand how they let them get away with this. The person who has a flashback in this movie that is the most notable is the dog. The dog has a flashback in this movie. I am not joking with you. I love dogs. I love dogs. The dog in this movie has a flashback. You gotta be joking, Wes Craven. This is absolutely the worst movie he ever made, like times 10. And like, I've seen My Soul to Take. That's a bad movie too. But that is Citizen Kane compared to this movie. I mean, you have a blonde girl who knows karate, kicking all the mutants' asses, even though she shouldn't. And she actually lives in the end. Spoiler! Everybody and their mother has stock footage flashbacks, including the goddamn dog. So, yeah, this is one of the worst. This is a really bad movie, and I would not recommend this to anybody. Like, don't even see this as a I want to see, is it so bad it's good? This is one of those, it's so bad it's bad. It's boring. Can't remember a single good character in the movie. Don't remember a single good line from the movie. Don't remember any kind of atmosphere or feel, which is what all the original one was about. That feel, man. You just, it was so good. You felt like you were in the hills with them about to get killed. That's what made it scary. And sacrificing your own mother for your own survival. If your mother died, would you sacrifice her? Like, presenting the viewer with stuff like that is brilliant. This movie, not brilliant at all. So that is The Hills Have Eyes Part 2. I would not recommend it to my absolute worst enemy. It is a piece of trash. Okay, so coming in at number 9, this is the only one that doesn't have, I believe, well, there's a few that don't have a number next to it, but this is the only one that can kind of be considered more of a reboot than a sequel. However, I consider it a sequel. Once I get into the story, I'll tell you why. It is Blair Witch from 2015. And I'm sure all of you are going, has this idiot seen Blair Witch 2? Is he really about to bash the new Blair Witch as opposed to Blair Witch 2 Book of Shadows? And yes, I am going to do that. This movie is actually worse than Blair Witch 2. And Blair Witch 2 is a piece of trash. It is one of the dishonorable mentions. I will spoil that. It is one of the dishonorable mentions because it is so dishonorable to that first movie. But I beg to differ with people that think this movie's better. because this movie is more dishonorable to the original, in my opinion. This has just always been the way I felt since the minute I saw this movie. It basically involves these kids that 15 years after the events of the original, or 20 years after the event, I think it's 15 years after the events of the original, they find a tape from this tape trader. And it's basically the tape, the Blair Witch, and where Heather and all them, and one of them is Heather's brother, I think. And he's like, I want to go looking for my sister in the woods. This tape proved that she was in the woods and she went missing in the woods. And basically he drags him and a bunch of his dumbass friends into the woods to search for his sister, who has been missing for 15 years. I am not kidding you. That is the plot to this film. All right. So write that on paper. That even sounds horrible on paper, man. Yo, bro, do you want to go pick up my sister who's been missing in the woods for 15 years? Yeah, man, can I bring my girl? Yeah, man, you can bring your girl. It's trash. It's absolute trash. And, like, what they do in this movie, what is so horrendous, what they do in this movie is they show everything. They show you an actual witch in this movie. They do that. They go that extra mile and show you the witch. The whole point of the original movie was it was scary because of what you didn't see. It was scary because of the old H.P. Lovecraft theme, the fear of the unknown. And that is one of the great themes in horror history, because it's the one that works the best, because you don't know what you're afraid of. And that's why it's scary. And that's what makes it scary. And it's like these people that praise this movie, I don't think you understand the original film. Because the original film worked because these kids were lost. They lost their map. They threw it in the river. They were scared. They were cursing at each other. They were running out of food, resorting to eating leaves. They were hearing things in their tents. When they got out of their tents, they saw all these creepy, like, stick figure, Blair Witch figures. And man, that's why that movie worked. It was simplicity. That classic scene where Heather runs out of the tent and she goes, "What the F is that? What the F is that?" And she turns to the camera and there's nothing there. See, that's what separates true horror fans from not true horror fans. The true horror fans don't need to see anything there. They're afraid and they get what the director was going for. The non-horror fans, they need to see some horrible floating CGI witch there. That's how you distinguish truth from false. That's just the way it is, in my opinion. And I think if you like this movie, it's cool if you like this movie. I'm not trying to bash anybody that likes this movie. But this movie is horrendously bad. Like, it is so terrible because it just totally stabs everything the original movie stood for in the back. And it's just such a bad plot. Like, why, if your sister was missing for 15 years and you knew she went to this woods, like, why did you need a tape to convince you, I want to go look for her in the woods? Like, what are you doing? Like, it makes no sense, man. If my sister went, I love my sister. If my sister went missing for 15 years in the woods and I found a tape of her in the woods, I wouldn't go looking for her tomorrow and bring my dumb friends with me. Oh, man, this movie is just disgusting. There's a scene where this woman cuts her foot on a rock and she, like, there's something, like a parasite inside her crawls up her leg, and that's supposed to be scary? Are you kidding me? She cut her foot? Really? Like, that's what's going to pass for horror now? That's a horror sequel? This woman cut her foot? Jesus. So bad, man. She cut her foot! Like, I don't know, man. That's just not horror to me. Is this camera still on, by the way? It says it's not blue anymore. I just want to make sure. Is it good, Miranda? Give me a thumbs up. No? Oh no, it happened. Are you good? Yeah? Okay. I don't know what happened. I think we lost the Facebook live stream. I don't know what happened. But we're still going to truck on here, ladies and gentlemen, because I know I still have people listening on Instagram. But man, this movie is so bad. And like, I don't get, like, there's a scene where this guy thinks, I'm going to climb this tree. And when I get to the top of the tree, I'm going to get this drone. They bring a drone with them. This way, the Blair Witch can't get us if we have a drone with us, right? So they put the drone in the sky so they can overlook the layout. And basically the guy, it goes in the tree, the person goes to look for it and basically falls out of the tree to their death. Like, that's a death scene in this movie. That is piss poor. Like, that is disgraceful, man. And it's absolutely just disgusting to me that happened, man. Like, I think that's so bad. But yeah, that is Blair Witch from 2015. If you haven't seen it, don't see it. It is an absolute stab in the back to that original movie and everything that original movie stood for. All right, so moving on to number 8. This is one I'm going to gloss over because I absolutely hate it to the point where I don't even bother to remember the plot to this one. This is Day of the Dead 2 Contagion. Yes, this is even worse than that Day of the Dead remake, and it's even worse than that new Day of the Dead that came out this year. It is by far the worst movie with that Day of the Dead title to it. So basically, Anna Clevel and James Doodleson, who, this is a spoiler, we will see again on this list, and unfortunately so. But Anna Clevel and James Doodleson, basically, they bought the rights from, I don't believe it was Romero, it might have been Rubenstein that they bought the rights from, and they bought the rights from them to use the name Day of the Dead. They wanted to use that as the title for this movie. And that was what they spent most of their money on. The rest of their budget, I don't know, it was maybe about $5 and a ham sandwich for the rest of the budget of this movie because it is horrible. Like, there's no real story to this movie. The acting is terrible. It's so poorly made and directed. I mean, these two, Anna Clevel and James Doodleson, are two of the worst horror movie directors ever. They made movies like Horror 101, Horror 102, Day of the Dead 2 Contagion, and another movie that will be on this list, Towards the Top. I will actually spoil that. It is one of the worst, if not the worst. But man, there's nothing worse than those two. They don't get it. They don't get the genre. They say, we're going to spend all our money and fool these poor fans into thinking that, hey, maybe this is George Romero, Day of the Dead 2. Maybe this was his long-awaited follow-up. Maybe this is the new Dead movie. You would be wrong in thinking that, because that is not what this is. This is two hacks who bought the rights to a beloved franchise, a beloved movie in Day of the Dead from 1985 with legendary Captain Rhodes, of course, Joe Pilato playing Captain Rhodes, and Richard Liberty as Dr. Frankenstein, and of course, Laurie Cardell as Sarah. And like, you just have so many, Gary Clark. Oh man, like so many fun, like just banter scenes, and like, oh man, that movie is so great. Like, I'm running this monkey farm now, Frankenstein. I want to know what you're doing with my time. Everything about that original movie was classic, and of course the Savini effects, man. Possibly Savini's masterpiece when it comes to effects. I love that movie, man. It like, when it comes to effects, I don't think you can get much better than the original Day of the Dead. Like, I think the effects in that movie are absolutely fantastic, and I think it is that definitely Tom Savini's crowning achievement. But this movie, no good effects, no good characters, no good gore, just absolute terrible filmmaking all around. This is just one of those movies that I don't care to remember. I saw it once. I remember renting it and feeling very upset because I remember I was one of those people that was tricked into thinking, man, maybe Romero did this. And then not seeing his name on the back, I was like, oh boy, I wonder how bad this one is. And it ended up being exactly that bad, man. This movie is absolutely terrible. Day of the Dead 2 Contagion, avoid it like the plague. It is terrible because I just wouldn't bother to watch it again. Horrible movie. Another one I'm going to gloss over, and then because we're going to go really in depth with these final 6. But at number 7, it's a part 7. It is Howling 7, New Moon Rising from 1995. This one got lucky for one reason. It was direct-to-video, and it is also, well, actually, I guess 2 reasons. It's direct-to-video, number 1. Number 2, it is in a franchise of movies that absolutely stunk after the first one. Like, Howling 2, Your Sister's a Werewolf is, okay, whatever. I can get through it. It is what it is. Then part 3, the marsupials with, like, kangaroo werewolves. Like, what are you doing, man? And then they brought in, like, this other guy. I forget his name. The guy, Clive something. He directed part 4 all the way, I think, to this movie. Man, this series is really bad for sequels. Like, pretty much all of them are bad. The only one that's watchable is maybe the second one. The third one is, like, really bad, too. But there's none worse than this one. Because this one is by far the one with the lowest budget. It's also the one by far with the weakest story, characters, and Joe Bob Briggs said it best. The main thing with horror movies, the number one thing you cannot do is let them become boring. And this movie is boring as watching grass grow. It is boring. Like, I can't even begin to explain. it's absolutely, I think, one of the worst made horror movies of all time. Like, I think it would be on a worst ever list. I think it is. Like, I think it actually may be the worst movie overall on this list when it comes to technically filmmaking. This may be the worst one. But I will give it the pass at number 7 because it was direct to video and because you're coming off like 5 sequels that were god awful. And even the first sequel was not that great of a movie. Your Sisters. I like the title more than I like the movie, so that should tell you something. But yeah, I'm gonna gloss over this one. Howling 7, New Moon Rising, bad, just plain old bad. But now we're into number 6, and of course we're gonna get into one of the most beloved bad movies possibly of all time. This is not on the Troll 2 level of beloved bad movies, but man, it's pretty infamous for being hilariously bad. And it is Jaws, The Revenge from 1987. Holy Jesus. Where do I begin with this movie? Okay, here's the plot of this movie. Lorraine Gray, who was in the original Jaws and the second Jaws, who's Sheriff Brody's wife. She's in this, and her 2 sons are all grown up and stuff like that. And basically at the beginning, one of them gets killed and eaten by a shark. She then moves to the Bahamas. She moves away from wherever I think on the East Coast, to the Bahamas. And when she moves to the Bahamas, she realizes that the shark is still after her and her family. The same shark swam from the East Coast all the way to the Bahamas. I'm not kidding. That was actually written. There was producers, there were writers, there was a director that never directed again. And Lorraine Gray never acted again. You have Michael Caine in this movie somehow, coming off an Oscar-winning performance, was actually shooting this movie while he was being honored at the Oscars, the Academy Awards for an Oscar. He could not be at the ceremony to accept his one and only Oscar he ever won because he was filming this piece of dog turd. I am not kidding. A shark trailing you from the East Coast to the Bahamas. The Bahamas, man. The Bahamas. It's so bad. It's like, that's like one of the most horrendous things I've ever heard. Why did you go there? Like, they make it very clear that the shark is it's personal between the shark and the Brody family, and the shark wants to eat Lorraine Gray and her sons and all these things. And Mario Von Peebles is in it using a horrible Jamaican accent. Mario Von Peebles, man, and oh my God, he's so bad in it. I mean, all the acting, other than probably Michael Caine, is really, really bad in this movie. It's one of those movies that just makes you scratch your head. You're just like, what were they thinking? Because coming off Jaws 3, which is, I think, there actually are some people that will tell you Jaws 3 is a lot worse than this. I disagree. I think Jaws 3 is a better movie than this. Like, as poor as Jaws 3 is, it's watchable. This movie is just like, I think it's a chore to get through. I know some people find it so bad it's hilarious, and that, I mean, all power to them. I'm just not one of those people. I think it really is that bad. Like, I don't have a good time watching this movie at all. Like, it's more fun to bash it than actually watch it. Like, I think that's what a lot of people have fallen into, that trap where people are kind of at the point where they're like, hey, you know, I'd rather just bash this and talk about how hilariously bad it is without actually doing their kind of research and stuff. But I mean, it is what it is at the end of the day. Jaws: The Revenge is just so bad on so many levels. There's a scene where they shoot a harpoon in the shark, and the shark screams. I'm not even kidding. Like a dramatic, woo! Like, oh my God, man! Like, what are you doing? Like, what were they thinking, man? They spent money on this. Like, they ended several careers with this movie, and they absolutely ended the Jaws franchise on the lowest of low points. I mean, this movie is god awful. Jaws: The Revenge from 1987 is just absolutely terrible movie, and I would not recommend it at all. Unless you're one of those people, I know some people that like good, bad horror movies, like Troll 2, like, this isn't a horror movie, but The Room, like movies that are so bad they're good. Some people would put that on that list. I'm not one of those people. I think it's actually that damn bad, and I think Jaws 3 is better. I know a lot of people disagree, but I'm totally on the I hate Jaws: The Revenge train because it's just ridiculous. That not even like from a funny standpoint is that funny that a shark swam from East Coast of the Bahamas to stalk your family for revenge for you killing its parents. Like, that's terrible. Like a shark should never have a vengeance plot. It just shouldn't. I don't know. I don't think it should. And I guess people find that hilarious, but it's just so stupid, man. I can't even. That's just so stupid that like I can't even pretend to like that. So that is Jaws: The Revenge at number 6. And now we are diving into the top 5, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, this is the cream of the crap, if you will. This is as bad as it gets. And coming in at number 5 is one of the movies I really, really hate these next 5. Like all 5 of these, I hate these movies pretty much equally. And it is Return to Sleepaway Camp from 2008. Holy oh Jesus, as old Jordy Verrill would say. This movie, wow. Just wow. You're coming off, okay, the original movie is a big cult hit, right? Sleepaway Camp from 1983. The legendary ending where Angela reveals, oh my gosh, Angela is a boy. You know, you learn that she has, you know, something between her legs. I don't know if I can even say that word on the air, but I won't. So you learn that Angela is a boy. And basically, in the following 2 movies, is replaced by a better actress in Pamela Springsteen, which I'm actually supporting the shirt. Yeah, I don't know if Facebook Live can see me or not. I think the light's off. I think we went off Facebook Live, so we're just on Instagram. Basically, the sequels were, let's have more fun with this, you know, whereas the original was that cult kind of more along the lines of serious slasher, but there are some laughs in there, like the softball scene, you know, where he says, eat crap and die, and the other kid goes, eat crap and live. Like, that's legendary comeback, man. I love that. And, man, like, the sequels I just love, because Pamela Springsteen is just so great, having fun, and the song, and drowning people in outhouses, and setting people on fire because they drink alcohol and do drugs and have sex with boys, and, like, that's just a fantastic motive for a slasher, man. Like being that moral killer. And I will absolutely review that trilogy one day because I love that trilogy. It's possibly my favorite horror trilogy. I love Sleepaway Camp 2. I love Sleepaway Camp 3. But Sleepaway Camp 4, Return to Sleepaway Camp, is by far the worst Sleepaway Camp. And it's the worst Sleepaway Camp because the original director came back because he didn't like the sequels. He didn't like the comedic tone it took. So he decided to make this piece of trash. And I have had the displeasure of meeting this guy, Robert Hiltzik, the director. Didn't like him. I met him at a screening of Sleepaway Camp, talked to him for maybe 5 minutes, and he came off as an absolute, you know, I'm not going to say what, but he can, yes, absolutely. Miranda was able to finish the words for me, even though, you know, she never met him. But it's true. He was absolute, you know, one of those. And I talked to him. I said, you know, why did you hate the sequel so much and make this movie? And he was like, listen, I know this new movie. He actually did admit, he said, this new movie was not what we wanted it to be. It was really bad. So even the director denounces this movie. And it's basically, it tells the story of this fat kid named Alan. And Alan goes to Sleepaway Camp. And Alan goes there and starts getting picked on. And I think we're supposed to feel sympathetic for the Alan character because he's such a fat person and he's getting bullied so bad. But I feel no sympathy for this character because this character is an ass. He is so mean to everybody. And he has this one line which he repeats to all the bullies that bully him. He goes, your ass stinks, and runs his fat cottage cheese stretch mark written body out of the room. And I'm just like, what are you doing? This is our protagonist, this fat cottage cheese stretch mark written guy. That's my protagonist? That's who I'm supposed to get behind, feel sympathy for? Hell no, Mr. Hiltzik. Hell no. I'd rather side with the antagonist in part 2 and 3. I'd rather side with Pamela Springsteen. I'd rather side with, why can't I think of her name? Molly in the movie, Renee Estevez. I'd rather side with her. Tracy Griffith. I'd rather side with her. This kid is the absolute terrible, the most worst protagonist I've ever seen in a movie. Absolute worst protagonist I've ever seen in a movie because you feel no sympathy for him. You hate him and his fat ass. You hate everything about him. He's the worst. And basically, one by one, kids get killed off at the camp in horrible, like, CGI-filled deaths. Like, there's one where they tie this kid to a chair and they make him drink gasoline and then light a cigarette in his mouth. And this awful CGI fire effect ensues, man. It's just so bad. Like, it's offensively bad. And, man, I just don't know what they were thinking with this movie. Of course, and the thing with a lot of people was, will there be a twist ending in this one, right? That was the big coming into this movie. What will be the twist ending? What will be the twist ending? The twist ending in this movie is the worst twist ending of all time. I'm gonna go that far with this. It is the worst twist ending in the history of film. You have a cop character in this movie who has a voice box, like one of those, like, survived throat cancer or whatever, and speaks, with the robotic voice. And we're led to believe that this is an ex-cop. It's obviously not an ex-cop. It's actually Felicia Rose dressed up in drag, like man drag, cop drag, if you will. And she's posing as this cop the entire time. You can tell in the first 5 minutes you see this movie that is the twist. You can tell because you know it's not a man, for one thing. You know that whatever is disguising the voice. And it's just terrible, man. Like, what a terrible twist ending to bring Felicia Rose back. Like, why not use Felicia Rose? Like, I would have had Felicia Rose run the camp and kill these kids off one by one, and that would have been brilliant. Really would have been good. You could have, okay, you want to sidestep the Pamela Springsteen movies? I don't agree, but you could do it. You're the creator of the series. I understand that. Have her kill some people on screen. Have her actually be Angela. No, instead we're going to have her dress in drag, lead you to believe that this fat kid is the one killing all these people the entire movie. Horrible acting, horrible characters, horrible dialogue, terribly directed, and it's a movie that took them over 5 years to make. Like, they had massive reshoots on this movie. It features some of the worst editing I've ever seen in a movie. You have, oh my gosh, just terrible. Vincent Pastore shows up in this movie, gets eaten by rats, and they don't even show anything. Like, this movie is just bad. Like, it's one of those movies that, like, it gives the viewer no credit for having a brain. And when I met Robert Hiltzik, I totally got that vibe. I felt this guy doesn't think horror fans are smart, and it's kind of, it's kind of crappy that he feels that way. But I mean, it is what it is at the end of the day. If he feels that way, let him feel that way. I really don't care. But Return to Sleepaway Camp from 2008, so bad, so terribly bad. Avoid it if you can. Coming in at number 4 is American Psycho 2. All-American Girl, starring, I know Cheyenne is a huge fan, as am I. I don't think you can possibly dislike Mila Kunis, and this movie is not her fault. And she has gone on record to say, I hate this movie too. So even she is against this movie. American Psycho 2 from 2002. Okay, so American Psycho comes out with Christian Bale, and it sets the world on fire. Everybody's loving to love Christian Bale and American Psycho. Taking these women home, doing crazy stuff to them, putting on these crazy, cleansing masks and the card. And man, American Psycho, the original, is one of the best horror movies of this century. Like, I think it's that damn good. Christian Bale just nails it. It's great. And when I heard the announcement of the sequel, I was thrilled. I was like, man, American Psycho 2 and Mila Kunis, who was red hot coming off that 70s show as the Jackie character who everybody loved. I was like, she's going to play the killer? This is going to be badass. They got William Shatner. I was like, how can this movie fail? The answer is it absolutely can fail because it is terrible. This is the plot of this movie. In the first 5 minutes, this is spoiler alert here. First 5 minutes, Mila Kunis is narrating over a dinner scene. And there's a woman at the table, there's a little girl at the table, and apparently an actor playing Patrick Bateman is at the table. You never see his face. And Mila Kunis basically tells you in the flashback that she killed Patrick Bateman. She killed him, and years later now she's in college, and she is trying to apply for William Shatner's assistant role to be this cop assistant, because if she becomes the cop's assistant, then she'll get this promotion, blah, 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 blah. And basically decides to kill all the people in the class so she can get the promotion, so she can be William Shatner's assistant. That's possibly the worst plot in the history of movies. That's just so bad, on so many levels. Okay, you killed your antagonist in your last movie, you never showed his face, and you had a 6-year-old girl kill him? Really? Why? And then they insinuate that some of the craziness from him transferred into her, and that's why she's so crazy and out for blood. And man, it's just so bad. There's a scene in this movie where she throws this woman's cat in a microwave, and they kill the cat, and I'm just like, what? Like, what? Like, there's a scene where she takes this guy back, and I thought this was going to be awesome. I was like, all right, you know, because all they had to do here, this was a simple formula. Have Mila Kunis, who was gorgeous, have her bring men back to her hotel. She screws with them mentally, she screws them physically, and then she kills them. That's all this movie had to be. That literally no involvement of Patrick Bateman, just a different American Psycho that is a woman now. Change the sex. It would have worked. Mila Kunis is a good actress, and she's voluptuous to look at. What did you do? No. We're going to throw her in college, and we're going to have her murder people in the class. Off screen, on screen, some of the worst kills I've ever seen in a horror movie. You have a guy that gets strangled to death with a condom. I'm not making this up. He gets strangled to death with a condom. That was their brilliant idea. And she says some awful line like, practice safe sex. I'm like, yo, what are you doing? And this movie is directed by Morgan J. Freeman. No relation to the Morgan Freeman who actually has talent. This guy was horrendous. And he's directing Teen Mom now. That's what he went on to do. American Psycho 2, I'm going to go on to make Teen Mom. I'm going to produce reality television because you have no talent, Morgan J. Freeman, and you're an idiot, Morgan J. Freeman. You shame the name Morgan Freeman because I know of people with the name Morgan Freeman that are better than you. And poor Mila Kunis that had to sit through this entire thing, this entire process, man. Like, it just boggles my brain how bad this movie is. And Shatner's in it. Shatner's classic Shatner. Like, he's over the top and bad and stuff, so he's the least of this movie's problem. Same with Mila Kunis. She's fine. It's just, and it's another one of those, like, where I think of Joe Bob Briggs, like, this movie does commit that sin of being really boring. It's a boring film. It's such a hard movie to get through because there's no real good gore. There's no really good characters. It's such a slap in the face to the original American Psycho. And man, it's just really one of those movies. If not for Mila Kunis being in it, I don't even know if people would really have seen this movie because she was kind of a big star at the time. She still is a big star. I really like Mila Kunis. But she has denounced the film. She said it's the worst thing she's ever been in. She regrets doing it. And I do know a little bit of backstory where they shot this. They were originally shooting this and it wasn't going to be related to American Psycho. But because American Psycho made so much money, they kind of wrote that Patrick Bateman plot into it. And that's why mainly she denounces the film because it's such a slap in the face to that original. But man, American Psycho 2, just absolutely terrible movie. I mean, just god-awful. How much time do I have left, by the way? I got 3 more to go. I just wanted to make sure. I got 13? 11? Okay, cool. Okay, 11. Okay, so because I really want to spend time on these, but we're going to get through the top 3 now. So American Psycho 2, avoid it. Avoid it like the plague. Unless you love Mila Kunis like me. I was tricked into watching it. I said, I love Mila Kunis. There's no way this could be that bad. It's that bad. Don't watch it. Coming in at number 3 is a part 3. Yes, I believe is the first part 3 on my list. It is Jeepers Creepers 3 from 2017. I believe this is the most recent movie on this list. And boy, oh boy, does it suck. This movie stinks. This movie is so bad. Basically, Victor Salva, after the second one, he made some pretty obscure kind of independent movies that nobody saw, and everybody was like, man, we'd love to see that Jeepers Creepers 3. Let's finish the trilogy, right? There was a whole controversy when this one got released because of Victor Salva's past. I don't want to get into that. I actually want to just talk about how bad these movies are. If you don't know the controversy, just look up Victor Salva controversy. You'll see. It's horrible. I warn you. But nothing is worse in this. Like nothing anybody could do is worse in this movie, man. This movie is oh my god, not even words to describe how bad this is. Basically, it takes place, and this is not even a spoiler. You'll pretty much figure this out. It takes place in between Jeepers Creepers 1 and 2. So this is basically Jeepers Creepers 1.5, 1.5, whatever. And you have the creeper come back, and these cops are trying to stop the creeper, and you're introduced to these teenager characters, and basically just the worst, just nothing happens in this movie. Like, Meg Ryan is in it, and she lost her son to the creeper, and there's this crazy murderous hand that she has, and through this hand, you could possibly learn how to kill the creeper, and they never do. And there's bad CGI in this movie, like bad CGI out the wazoo. It premiered on the Sci-Fi Channel. that's another thing where you can go, wow, this is really, really bad. I do know they showed it in theaters for one night, and I do have a friend that went to go see it, and he was pissed. He was like, you gotta be kidding me. I paid like 20 plus bucks to see this in a nice theater. You know, popcorn, soda, all that good stuff. And this is the product you gave me, Victor Salva. Should be ashamed of himself. This was a horrible... He should be ashamed of himself for a lot of reasons. But this reason, this movie is towards the top of the list, man. This movie is bad. There's nothing good about this movie. Not one good character, not one good scene, not one good kill. It's just blasphemy. It's an hour and a half of blasphemy. So bad. Jeepers Creepers 3, just avoid it, man. If you like the first two, you'll hate this. Like that's another thing. Like I saw the poster and I was like, this is gonna be awesome, man. Like third time's the charm, Creeper's back, you know. I was thinking it was gonna take place after part 2 because everybody wants to see, will that thing come back to life? That was the great part about part 2, is that it perfectly segued for a part 3. You know what we'll do? No, we're going to put Jeepers Creepers 3 in the middle, and then at the end of part 3, we're going to have the woman from part 1 and say that she's going to come back to try to hunt down the creeper, even though in timeline theory, she's going to have to wait another 23 years because that thing is going to go to sleep for another 23 years. So it's just all a bunch of BS, man, and it's terrible. I absolutely denounce that movie. It's so bad. So Jeepers Creepers 3 at number 3. Coming in at number 2, I'm sorry, but I'm gonna have to gloss over this one too because I really want to bash the last one on this list. It is Silent Night, Deadly Night, Part 4, Initiation. Here's the plot to this piece of turd. A bum is walking in the street and eating stuff out of a garbage, where he sees this woman, on the top of a building and. She jumps off the building and bursts into flames before she hits the ground and dies. And the rest of the movie is this stupid reporter trying to figure out as to why that happened, and witches are brought in, and Clint Howard is in it touching women in the butt, who's apparently trying to play the Ricky Caldwell character from the first 3 movies, who was played so well by, of course, the legendary Eric Freeman, and was played in part 3 by Bill Moseley. You have Clint Howard playing that character in this, but he has no killer Santa Claus motives. This is one of those movies where they tried the Halloween 3 route. They said, let's make a movie that doesn't involve the first 3, and we'll try to base it around Christmas. This movie hardly has any Christmas things in it. And it's directed by Brian Usna, who actually has done some good movies. Society. Yeah, he's done some good stuff. Bride Reanimator. It's a passable movie. This is bad, man. Like, this is like, what were you thinking, my guy? Like, what were you thinking? Like, just so dishearteningly bad. You have, this woman is like fighting cockroaches and this witch coven, and like, none of it makes sense, man. It's just a bunch of like, none of it ties together. None of it is any good, and absolutely all of it makes no sense. And like, there's no real reason to watch this movie. It has decent effects. That's the only positive I could give it, because I believe the guy who did the effects in this movie also did the effects for Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4, The Dream Master, and he nailed that movie. I mean, I love Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master. Probably my favorite Elm Street sequel, just because it's so fun in the 80s. But man, Silent Night, Deadly Night 4, just terrible, man. You slap the first 2 movies, and the third movie's pretty bad too, but at least it's like it's boring, but it's like watchable, because like, it's kind of funny that Bill Moseley's killing all these people with kind of like a bucket on his head, and his brain is in the bucket. And that movie is another movie that features a blind girl. I think some people would tell you that Silent Night, Deadly Night 3 is worse than this. I beg to differ. At least Silent Night, Deadly Night kind of had a killer Santa in it. At least it kind of took place around Christmas. At least it kind of had a attractive looking lead. This movie is 0 out of 10 for me. Like, this is one of the worst movies I've ever seen. This is like definitely in my top 5 most hated movies. This is one of them. Just because it's so bad. There's no point to it. There's no redeeming quality, really. It's just bad. Like, it's one of those direct-to-DVD movies, and I know, should I give it leniency? I honestly, no, I'm not giving this leniency. This movie sucks. Like, I'm just going to flat out say that. This movie is terrible. Silent Night, Deadly Night 4, avoid it, man. It's just god-awful. I would say, probably the top 5 movies are all 0 out of 10s. I wouldn't even give them a 1 out of 10. And that leads us to the dishonorable mentions, and then we will get into number 1. Goodbye, Steve! We love you. Enjoy your Brooklyn job. Steve's good. Steve has a good job now, and he's working hard, so we all love Steve for that. But into the dishonorable mentions, and then to number one, dishonorable mentions. Ready for this? Boogeyman 2 from 1983. If you haven't seen it, don't see it. It's a stock footage movie, and it's really bad. It will confuse the hell out of you like it did me, because it made no sense. A lot of it was like these people talking at a... But here's my thing, like... This movie just totally just didn't stick to the roots, and it was one of those direct to sci-fi movies. Race to the Grave is a little bit more watchable, and it does have a little bit more sex appeal. I do always remember liking the cover better, but Necropolis is by far the worst one. Hellraiser Revelations, again, in a long line of bad Hellraiser sequels, probably this is the worst one. This and Hellworld are the worst two. This one was made because they were losing the rights to the franchise, and they decided we have to throw a Hellraiser movie out there, so let's have a bunch of people sit in a house for an hour and a half, and they find the puzzle box somewhere through. And they recasted Pinhead. They recasted the legendary, why can't I think of his name, Doug Bradley as Pinhead. They recasted it with this new guy who's fat. They recasted with a fat Pinhead, who more like Poophead, or I would say the other one, but around the air. Blair Witch 2, Book of Shadows, I had to put it on this honorable mentions. It got lucky because I hate Blair Witch from 2015 more, or else it would have been on here. And Exorcist 2, The Heretic, that is another really, really bad one. I don't even need to get into how bad that one is. Another really just boring movie. But coming in at number one, my least favorite, not just my least favorite horror movie of all time, not even just the worst horror sequel of all time, but I think it's the worst movie of all time. I'll go that far. I think it's that bad, and I think it's that offensive to true horror fans, and it is none other than from 2006, James Doodleson and Anna Clevels' Creepshow 3. This is the bottom of the barrel. This is my least favorite movie ever made, and the one that possibly gets me more angry than any other. So I preface this by saying, sorry for what I'm about to say. If it's unfair, if it's not politically correct, I don't give a damn, because this movie's horrible. This movie is the worst. The worst. Like, the, in all capitals, worst. Basically, the same thing. Anna Clevel and James Doodleson, same thing as Day of the Dead. They bought the rights to Creepshow from Stephen King and George Romero, the two guys that made that series work, that made the original fun, and Stephen King writing the stories, and Romero directing the tales, and having all these guys, and then like Michael Gornick directing part 2, which I think is super underrated and so much fun. The Raft is one of my favorite cheesy 80s segments of all time. You know, those kids that go in the lake and get eaten by this monster, right? This movie, they bought the rights and then absolutely had no money left over for the budget to make this movie, and decided to make the movie anyway. It's 5 jolting tales of crap. This movie is terrible. It runs through basically the old conventions of Creepshow. You have 5 tales, an anthology story, and none of them are good. They're all bad. And they all have these bad flash computer animation that literally 6-year-olds could make better computer animation than the people that made this movie. The first story is entitled Alice, I believe, and it involves this girl who goes home. She's an absolute B word. I can't say it on the air, but you know what it stands for. She comes home and she finds her father messing around with a universal remote. And every time he touches a button on it, he changes the family's ethnic flavor. So they turn into a black family. And then he hits a button and they turn into a Hispanic family. And then he hits a button and they're a Chinese family. I'm not kidding. This is in a horror movie. They changes their ethnicity for no reason. And then for some reason, the main girl starts growing hideous boils and blobs on her body and decides, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go into somebody's house and start eating stuff. She shuffles into this guy's house and starts eating his wedding cake. And then goes back to the family, who are all not black, Hispanic, and Chinese now. And they basically accidentally turn her into a rabbit. That's the first story in this movie. And it only gets worse from there, man. I don't want to get into all these. There's one where this guy falls in love with the radio because the radio tells him to commit murder. And like he actually starts robbing banks and murdering people to impress a woman radio. You're trying to impress a woman radio. Stop the madness. I can't, man. I can't. This is what George Romero and Stephen King, they poured their hearts and souls into these movies of Jordy Verrill and Father's Day, and they're creeping up on you, and Something That Tides You Over, and The Crate, and The Raft, and Old Chief Woodenhead, and The Hitchhiker, all these classic stories, and you have a story in this about a man trying to impress a woman radio? That's where you're going with this? Holy Jesus, please give me strength. They're 2 stories in. You got a woman radio and a dumb family that plays around with a universal remote and turns their daughter into a rabbit. The third story is, I believe the third story is the one with the call girl. There's a call girl killer, and she, like, you know, she's killing all these people that call her to have sex with them and stuff. And then basically this guy calls her, and she has sex with him, and then she kills him, and then she tells him, and then he tells her that he's a demon and pretty much kills her, which is just the stupidest thing ever. Ripped off the Pick Me Up episode of Masters of Horror, by the way, which you absolutely, it was made at the same time, so I know you ripped it off. You untalented, miserable, ugh. I hate Anna Clevel and James Doodleson, if you can't tell. And then there are 2 more stories in this one. One involves this professor, and he's getting married to this woman, and she's like super hot. And these 2 of his prized pupils decide, how much time do I got left, Cheyenne? 2 minutes? Okay. If you can extend me for like 5 more. Actually, no, you're good. You're good. I'll just, give me, all right, whatever. I'm just going to wrap this up. Horrible. They basically, they rip this woman apart because they believe that he can't get married to somebody who's so hot. I don't know. It's absolutely blasphemy. I don't know. And then the last one's the worst. The last one involves this businessman going to work. Cheyenne, you're going to love this. This businessman going to work. He buys a hot dog before he goes to work. He drops it and decides, I'm going to give it to this bum. He gives it to a bum, and the bum chokes to death on the hot dog. And after he chokes to death on the hot dog, he comes back to haunt the guy who gave him the hot dog. It's the longest segment in the movie. It's like 40 minutes long. It is the worst anthology segment I've ever seen in a movie, and it's the worst anthology movie I've ever seen. Creepshow 3 is the worst horror movie sequel of all time, and I hate it with a burning passion. I hate it more than I hate the Yankees. I hate it more than pretty much just about everything because it stabbed in the back 2 of my favorite horror icons of all time. It middle fingered George Romero and Stephen King to the point where it disgusts me. It's so disgusting that these people bought the rights and did absolutely nothing with them, and they tricked people into thinking this is actually going to be a good movie. This is actually going to become the Masters of the Macabre. Instead, they came out with this thing. And it's inexcusable, man. The worst horror movie sequel of all time is Creepshow 3, and I hate it. I hate it to death. But we're winding down here, I think. We got 1 more minute here, so I just want to thank everybody for hanging with me. I made it. I made it through the list of poop. We made it. We had audio. I don't know if we had sound. We had sound on Facebook for a while, but we didn't. I think we lost picture. I'm gonna find out. Is it good? Was it good? It wasn't good. Okay, we lost the Facebook feed, so I don't know. Maybe we'll have to watch this on YouTube or something. I'll find a way. I'll find a way. But that is going to be all for now. I am the Pajama Pants Playa, the Cemetery Man of Salem, Mass. This is John Grande signing off. Peace, ladies and gentlemen. Don't have that bad taste stay in your mouth like me. Cut it, Casper. That's a wrap. Woo, baby.